You aren't afraid, are you?
No, but I respect some of the superstitions of others. Often they are founded in fact.
Broadcasting live from our Sanctum Sanctorum in Venice, California. I'm Krista, and we are the Sixth Sense Society. Welcome to another episode of the Sixth Sense Society. Tonight, we are thrilled to be talking to Jennifer Baganoski and Theresa Whaley of Spirits and Sirens, who are makeup artists by day and paranormal investigators by night. Welcome, ladies.
Sorry about that. Krista wasn't supposed to do that, so I didn't have your mics turned on. Sorry about that.
Sorry.
But they are now.
So anyway, before we get started, we're going to see if Michael has some messages.
Yeah, we've got some cool things coming up. Now, just to let everybody know that next week we are not going to have a show. It's Labor Day, and Krista and I deserve a break, so we're going to take a week off. But we'll be back.
It's not next week, it's the week after.
Or week after. No, it's next weekend. But anyway, the 1st or 2nd is going to be the Labor Day, and we're going to have that one off. We've got some really cool stuff. Oh, that's right. Cosmic Weather coming up next week. I'm sorry.
Exactly, yes.
Got my calendar mixed up. And then coming up in September, we have some really great shows. We've got one on Diaries and Grimoires, Magical Diaries with Aleister Crowley. We've got some more ghost hunters coming up in September and October. We've got all kinds of cool things. So just go to our website, sixthsensesociety.com, and it's SIXTH spelled out, sixthsensesociety.com, and you can find out what next show is and join us. So should be a lot of fun. And we've got some just really great things in store. And then in October, we are probably going to be moving the show to a Tuesday afternoon instead of Sunday evening. So keep an eye on that. We'll let you guys know the exact time as we get a little closer to that, but that's coming up too. And it'll make it a little easier for our friends on the East Coast. So with that, I'm going to kick it back to you guys, and I hope you guys have a great show. I'm sure I'll chime in too. I'm excited to be with Spirits and Sirens Paranormal tonight, and we've been really looking forward to this. So over to you, Krista.
Great. Thanks, Michael. So welcome again, ladies. We're happy to have you. I thought it might be fun to start with how each of you got involved in the paranormal to begin with.
So we both had experiences since the time that we were children that nobody could really explain or figure out. And I think as kids, we both had a lot of interest in the paranormal and ghosts and things that other people couldn't see. So the older we got, the more we really started to dive into these interests and the metaphysical. And here we are today.
Yeah. Living in haunted houses since we were born. Yeah. Really just stuck with us, and it just really made us want to know more of like what's out there and what we can't see.
And is there life after death, which we would definitely say there is.
Definitely.
Yeah, we believe that as well too. And then how did you both meet each other?
So we met through Sephora, being makeup artists.
Yeah, we both worked there. And when I met Jen, I instantly knew that we would become best friends. And around that time, or shortly after, I moved into the house that I'm at now, which is actually very active with paranormal activity. And Jen was the only person that really could understand and I could talk to about it. Mm-hmm. We kind of realized, let's combine our passions of makeup and the paranormal and just do something different.
Because you have all these ghost hunting teams out there. You know, you have plumbers by day and paranormal investigators by night, but you haven't ever seen makeup artists by day and paranormal investigators by night until now. So,
yeah.
We're not the only ones that do it, but it was just an idea that kind of came to us and we ran with it.
Yeah, we'll do makeup for weddings, and then we'll pull some tarot cards for them and Reiki. We'll give them the full experience.
Mm-hmm.
It's true. It's one of the things I was drawn to about you both, and I thought it was very playful too. One of the impressions I have from just seeing you through Instagram is that you have a sense of playfulness as you approach the paranormal, which is a little refreshing, actually.
It doesn't have to be all dark and scary. It can just be fun.
Yeah, I mean,
we want to bring light to the darkness. That's really our main goal. If we can make something that scares other people seem a little less scary, or help people to understand it in a way that makes them able to kind of grasp things and maybe interact with loved ones that have crossed over, or not be afraid to get a reading and find out some information that maybe they could benefit from. I mean, that's really what we're all about. We kind of want to bring light to things that sometimes people fear.
And one of the things too that I've noticed is fear attracts more activity. And what I had to really do is get over my fear of, living with spirits, living in a haunted house. The more joy you have, the less scary it actually is. So we want to help people in that way to find almost like the joy in life, and how it really doesn't have to be that scary.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really interesting idea because, we talk about that in just the regular day-to-day life, how what your mindset is. And again, on a regular basis, if I'm constantly anxious, it's not necessarily that I draw that experience into me, but it's a different vibration if I try to look at life optimistically and try to be, realistically positive, because there are those fake positive things that scare me a little. So I never thought about it like connected to the paranormal world. That makes sense.
The more stressed out that I am, I notice that the activity in my house amps up. So I've learned that I've really just had to have a different mindset, and I want to help other people going through that have a different mindset, because it really makes a world of difference.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, negativity attracts negativity, and I think too, if you have something around that's maybe a slightly darker spirit, if you give off more like fearful vibes or negative energy, it's going to feed off of it, and I almost feel like it makes it a little bit more active. Where if you live your day-to-day life being happy and you're not afraid to laugh and just to find the joy, like Theresa was saying, then sometimes it kind of fights things off.
It's funny. One of the things that I did a long time ago was I did a lecture that I was asked to do on curses, and what is a curse, and how does it work, and all this kind of stuff. And there's something really interesting about what you were just saying, is that one of the things about curses, they tend to attach to a person through guilt. So if you feel like you don't deserve happiness, you don't deserve success, then that's what allows it to kind of take those things away from you. So a lot of it has to do with your own psyche. But the real interesting thing is that there is no such thing as negative energy, so to speak, or dark energy. There's only positive. And there's a story attributed to Einstein, I don't know if it's true or not, but that he was in Germany and this teacher was picking on this student. I don't know if you've heard this. And he was saying, does it get cold? And well, the teacher's point was that if there's evil in the world and God is all powerful, then God must allow it to occur. So therefore God is evil on some level. And so he asked if it gets cold, Einstein, and the teacher said, yeah, it gets cold at night. And he says, well, no, physics says there's no such thing as cold. There's heat. We can measure heat in degrees, but we can't measure cold. Absolute zero is just the absence of heat, but heat is the only tangible. He said, so does darkness exist? And the teacher said, yeah. He said, well, again, science disagrees with you. We can't measure darkness. We measure light. We measure light in lumens and wavelengths, but there's no measure of darkness. Darkness is the absence of light, but light is the tangible. He said, so does evil exist? And the teacher said, yeah. I said, so you're still not getting it. He said, goodness is the only thing that exists. He said, just like, heat and light, that darkness is just the absence of goodness, and goodness is the only tangible. And I think when you can have humor, when you can be lighter, as you're saying, when you're not really into that dark, dark place, I think it's really hard for that dark energy to manifest and to have a voice. And it's your own lightness that keeps it at bay. And when you lose that lightness, we always said we were going to start our own church, and we're going to call it Temple of the Fool. And the whole premise was that you can only attain oneness with God when you can take nothing in life too seriously, including the religion itself. So the idea, once you lose your sense of humor, I think you're in big trouble. And so I think even with ghost hunting and stuff, I think a sense of humor goes a long way.
It really does. Definitely.
That's really beautifully said. I love that you tied Einstein in. Whenever you combine the scientific with the paranormal, I feel like that's when you really truly find the answers.
That is so true. I love that.
Yeah, it's they're getting closer for sure, I think. Now, one of the things I was kind of curious about you both is who were your influences, or who do you admire already in the paranormal field, whether it's a person or a book or anything like that?
I would say we both really admire Ken Boggle,
Yes.
who is a tarot reader, and he's so authentic and so genuine. And he really, truly does give the very best readings, but he's so honest with his approach. And he'll tell you if something, isn't psychic.
Yeah.
He'll be very straightforward with you. And I feel like he really puts a good face to the paranormal community, because he does so much more, I think, than just tarot reading, too.
For sure.
And he's done a lot of past life work for me that has just really blown my mind. So I really do admire him.
And then growing up, I always admired Lorraine Warren. She was really, to me, one of the first pioneers of the paranormal for women, and I just always looked up to her. I know there's, and I've met her, and she was just really wonderful. So she's one of my heroes of the paranormal.
Oh, that's really cool. And now you're also you live in the Detroit area, is that correct?
Yeah,
we do.
Do you know Mystic Mitten, the two women that we interviewed, Hillary and Jessica?
So I don't know them personally, but we follow them on Instagram, and they seem really fun. And I would love to.
We've been talking about wanting to meet up with them.
Yeah,
we just need to send them a message already and just see if they would be kind enough to hang out with us. Yeah, because I really would love to meet them. Their Instagram page is so exciting to watch.
Yeah, it's really nice. We're all about supporting other women in the paranormal, and I think it's great having other, women groups out there, especially so close to us in the Detroit area. To me, that's really inspiring.
Yeah, we're kind of both, Michael and I, we both want to bring on more women because, as you know, it's not as popular for them to do the actual kind of technical work and the investigation. Certainly, women will be used as mediums and psychics, but it seems like it's becoming more popular. But do you have any sort of experience with your being a woman, and how did the men treat you? And do you think it's kind of on the rise right now for women to be involved?
I think it is on the rise for women to be involved. I think that more and more people get really excited at the notion of women going on paranormal investigations and leading teams and events. We've actually worked a lot with Detroit paranormal expeditions in the area, and they have been nothing but sweet and kind and so supportive to us. And we've just had the best experiences ever with them.
Yeah.
So far we've had really good experiences. It's not to say that one day down the road we won't have one that's, less than pleasant, but right now we're very, very lucky.
Yeah, we've been very blessed with that.
Well, that's great. And it's my impression, it seems like there's a lot of paranormal, activity in Detroit. And maybe it's just because I happened upon, two groups of women, but it seems like it's getting to be popular there. Is that true?
I think so.
I think there's a lot of stuff. You got the whole Native American aspect to it. You've got,
when you go up north, you've got Mackinac, which is one of the most haunted places in the country. So, we've always had a lot of paranormal activity in Michigan, but I think just the allure of Detroit is really picking up. On one hand, it's very up and coming, and then on the other hand, it still looks a little apocalyptic in different areas.
Yeah, it does.
It's got all kinds of vibes mixing together, so it draws in different people for different reasons, and there's so much history there that wherever there's history, there's always going to be some kind of a spirit or a ghost story.
Yeah.
That makes sense for sure. Did you both grow up in Detroit, or do you move there at some point?
So we grew up outside of Detroit, just I would say about 20 minutes outside of Detroit. But both of my parents grew up in Detroit, and they've had a lot of crazy ghost stories. They both, my mom grew up in a haunted house. So it kind of runs in my family too, of having paranormal experiences. So your parents embraced the whole haunting thing, it sounds like. They did. My mom especially. She, like me, grew up in a haunted house and has tons of crazy stories. So she didn't know it at the time, but the previous owner had committed suicide in the house.
Ooh.
And she was having these dreams, and she was telling her neighbor about them. And there was that happened in that house. And, things would move around. She would hear footsteps. One day she left the house and she set up a recorder, and you heard footsteps, and there was a male voice that said, "Help me." And so my mom and all of her sisters just had some crazy experiences, and they eventually moved away from the house. But there was a lot of activity there.
Wow, that's crazy. My mother was very psychic, but brought up Catholic, and she was very scientific, but was the most psychic in my family. And only now and then she'd kind of drop a bomb on us and she could see someone that had died, or she'd get these really incredibly specific psychic things. And especially around me, she would call me and say, "Oh, Chris, I'm worried about this new roommate." And I'd be like, "Mom, it's great. It's cool." And then the next day, the person would go bonkers. And so whenever my mom called, it was like, "Okay, Mom's calling." But it was kind of too bad because she was raised a certain way that she couldn't really embrace it fully.
And so it's interesting that you say that, because I grew up Catholic. My mom is really Catholic, and there's certain aspects that they embrace, and then there's other things that they're not so fond of, like the tarot reading and the things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as like the ghosts go and life after death, my mom has been really open to that aspect of it.
That's definitely helpful, I think, when you grow up where people your family acknowledges the hauntings and that they exist, compared to, because as a tarot reader, I have people coming to me sometimes that can't talk about anything paranormal to anyone because of the society they are in. And maybe it's a little better, but there's still some people that have families or live in or have work situations they can't talk about being psychic because they're a banker or things like that. And it's kind of sad to me that we can't just openly explore this.
I totally agree. And I feel like that has been a lot of our experience
Mm-hmm.
over the past few years. And I feel like now, slowly but surely, I'm kind of starting to break away from that mindset where you can't like really talk about it, or if you do talk about it, you have to be very careful with what you say. I don't know. I think that everybody has like a different job. So, depending on what you're doing, it can be a little scary to say certain things to certain people, especially if they aren't expecting maybe the bomb that you're going to drop on them. So maybe you want to use caution with certain things. But I do think that there's a place for everybody. And I think that the more people that are open to talking about it, the more accepting our society will eventually become.
And I mean, and really that's how Jen and I kind of grew close, is because at work, it was not something that I could really openly talk about. So, I mean, now I do. But our work actually, when Jen worked at Sephora with me, they created something called Sephora Life, so celebrating the people of Sephora, and they actually featured us last October. So I thought that was really fun and really
it was very fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
And we just felt so blessed that our work was accepting of our weirdness.
That is really great.
It was very cool.
Mm-hmm.
So what are some of your favorite places that you've been, whether it's investigating or visiting, that are haunted?
So I actually was in New Orleans last week doing some investigating, and it wasn't my first time there. I've been to New Orleans a number of times, but it was my first time going to the Myrtle Plantation. And it was absolutely stunning. Like visually, it's such a beautiful place to go. You feel like you're in a fairy tale, but energetically, it's very heavy.
Oh.
And there were different places that I went when I was walking around, and it was right before sunset. But even though it was that time of day, I felt like it was extremely active. And I was seeing a lot, and I had a lot that was communicating with me. And it really, because I had been to a few plantations already on this trip, and this one really just kind of grabbed me, because just the intensity and the sorrow of the spirits that were still there, I almost like want to go back and see if I can do some kind of like energy work to try to help like lift some of the spirits that are trapped there, some of the slaves that have died there. It was a really beautiful place, but really tragic at the same time. So for me, I feel like that tops the list right now.
And are you both sensitives or mediums or psychics when you go into places? Do you pick up things that way too?
Very intuitive. I would definitely say that we do a lot of mediumship. I don't like to use the word psychic. I don't know why.
I feel the same way. I feel like, I
Yeah.
feel like when you say you're psychic, it's almost like you've got to prove yourself. I don't know.
Like a degree or something behind you. I don't know. I feel like the word psychic, there's so much weight to it.
Mm-hmm.
So I like to say intuitive.
Yeah, I would say intuitive, sensitive. We both are. We both feel energy. Just walking into a room, I mean, you can feel energy that way. And I feel like for us, we feel a lot of that. I also consider myself clairaudient, so I hear a lot. I'll hear people talking I get messages that way, all different ways. So yeah.
Yeah, I consider myself clairsentient a lot, and then clairvoyant.
So tell people that might not know what clairsentient is. Clairvoyant, I think people know what that is.
So you feel a lot. Very empathic, very emotional. Sometimes if you go to a place and someone's trying to communicate with you exactly how they died, you'll feel it in a certain area of your body. So like for me, if I go to a place and maybe somebody died of a heart attack, like I'll feel it in my chest. Sometimes I'll feel it in my arm, and then I'll kind of put the two together and I'll say, okay, it was a heart attack. Or sometimes like I'll feel a pain like in my head, and I'll know, maybe it was more of like an aneurysm or something along those lines. So you feel a lot. You connect with things on a very deep emotional level.
And is there a difference, do you think, between an empath and someone who is clairsentient?
I think it's all a part of the same family. I think it's just a matter of what degree you experience things.
Yeah, it gets the terminology is getting quite complex. So I've been in metaphysics for so long, and also because I'm a working reader, I've recently decided I'm wanting to reclaim the word psychic because it's simple. It's like,
yeah.
So, but that's
really
just.
It's sometimes that like thing. I totally get it. I hate it.
So I mean, it's more like a joke. I mean, it's just because initially I thought, oh, I don't want to be called a psychic, and I still use intuition, and then it's just getting like, I notice like there's all these degrees of not just the clairs, but there's other things I don't even know what they are at this point, but it's fine. I mean, I think what people feel comfortable with, in terms of, I've gotten to the point where if a person feels comfortable with it and they just explain what it means to them, to me, that's enough.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think you have to use all the fancy terms.
So are you, you want to say something,
coming
Michael?
back to the ghost hunting again, what are some of the cool places that you guys have investigated? And let's hear some of your ghost hunting stories.
So we've actually been doing a lot of work with DPX at Eloise, which is an asylum in Westland, Michigan. We've been there a number of times, and every time we go, there is always a different experience to be had. They just recently had an event, actually, that was pretty amazing. Ken Buckle came in for that, and Dr. Gina, she had also been flown in for that. And the energy was so heavy in there, and you could sense so many spirits, like more so than ever. So it was pretty wild. And you could go into different rooms, and everyone was doing different readings and things, and you could pick up on different spirits that wanted to talk, and it was really fascinating. But in times prior to that, we've had some days that weren't necessarily as active. Other areas of the asylum sometimes will feel really, really heavy. People will start to feel sick to their stomach, like, things aren't going so well, but then you'll move to another area and everything will feel fine. And then, of course, the weather always plays a huge role in it. As you can see, it's thundering like crazy, lightning.
or if you go close to a full moon, that affects the energy too. I find that we went, one of the last times we went was right before a full moon, and that was just crazy. I have never felt so sick in my life. But everybody, she was acting very odd. So it really affected everybody's energy. So interesting.
So another quick question too. Of course, on TV we saw the gadgets and geo boxes and K2s and everything else. So I'd be curious as to know your methodology. What is it that you guys find works best for you? And are you tech heavy or tech light and old school, or what do you guys like to do when you go into a hunt?
So we're getting into tech more. We like to use our own personal abilities. We love K2 meters, EMF detectors, dowsing rods. We've been experimenting with ghost boxes and things like that. But it's so interesting because we'll investigate with other groups of people, and they'll pull out all these fancy tech gadgets, and they're really cool. And we want to get more into that.
We have a spirit box. It's not nearly as amazing as some of the high-tech ones of our other groups that we've worked with. But hopefully one day we will work our way up to like a really crazy, intricate spirit box. I do find them to be extremely helpful, especially if you're already picking up on, a spirit that's maybe in a certain area. If you talk through Spirit Box, a lot of times you get more direct answers that way.
Mm-hmm.
So I have been enjoying that. My next splurge is going to be a Boo Buddy. I really want one of those teddy bears that you bring paranormal investigations. I just think that would be so much fun.
And then one thing that we started using that we really love, they're called Kanzari cards. And so tarot cards tell you about yourself. The Kanzari cards tell you about the spirit. And it's almost like putting a puzzle together. It's another way for spirits to communicate with you about maybe how they died, what messages they had. They're really, really interesting.
Mm-hmm. We like to take those on investigations.
We had an interesting experience with some of the tech stuff. We were at our friend David Oman's, and of course, for the last couple of weeks, he's been celebrating the 50th anniversary of the Manson murder since he lives next door. And we were up at his place one night, and he had one of the REM pods, I guess, sitting on the bar. And it had been sitting there for hours, and nothing had happened with it, just sitting. And then we started talking about Sharon Tate, and all of a sudden the thing's going off like crazy, It's just, and how can that be? How can it sit there for 3 hours and do absolutely nothing until you start talking about a particular spirit, and suddenly it's lighting up and buzzing and doing all these things, pretty amazing. So.
Yeah, and then at the, I wouldn't use the word celebrating, honoring more of the situation, because he's very respectful to the people that have died. And but the night, I guess it was the night we were up there for the 50th anniversary, and talk about tech gear. Oh my Lord. It was like crazy amounts of people there with all kinds of things. It was almost, for me, a little like overwhelming, because so much in one room. It was all in one room. We had the EMF readers, we had the spirit box. The one woman was really very good with an angel spirit board. So it was different from the Ouija board, and she had it blessed. And there were two women, I forget their names. They were really lovely that were helping there, and they work in San Diego. So it was kind of fascinating, because I've seen a lot of the technical things, and usually it's the EMF meters, but to have it all, there was other things too I don't think I knew, in one room was it was really intense. So one thing I wanted to ask your opinion about with your experiences is, do you think there is a difference between a ghost and a spirit? And if so, what is the difference?
I definitely think so. I think a ghost doesn't necessarily have to be a spirit. Sometimes it can be an energetic imprint on an area. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you may have a spirit that hasn't necessarily crossed over. But recently I've been diving into all kinds of crazy theories about the origins of spirit and the soul and how everything is connected. And I don't think that there has to be a spirit attached to a ghost, although sometimes there can be.
That's interesting. I've read a couple of different, more mystics talk about that when people die, their astral body is like a shell that they leave behind, and that is some of the hauntings. And then one man, he's a doctor that works with spirit attachment, and it's these astral fragments, he calls them, that attach to people. So it really isn't the spirit of the person, but it's like part of them, that gets discarded, just kind of like clothing, I guess. I thought it was an interesting idea anyway.
I think it's a very interesting theory, and I think there's actually a lot of truth in that. Mm-hmm. I kind of almost feel like the soul splits off into different fragments with each life that you have too, so it would only make sense that when you do cross over, that little bits and pieces do get left behind.
Yeah. And that's another thing that is debated, I think, among some paranormal people. And we did a show on spirit attachments and if they're real. And my father has done a lot of work with it, and he's actually removed spirit attachments. And before I started investigating, I honestly used to think it was a dorky idea. And then when I started investigating and reading, I was like, oh, this is actually fascinating. And so what are your thoughts about spirit attachment? Do you think it exists? And can you have a spirit attached to you when you're investigating or not?
I definitely think that it exists. I've experienced it myself a little bit, and I do think that things can definitely attach to you and follow you home. I do think objects can have spirits attached to them. When you go to antique shops, you can feel the energy in there. And I've known several people that have brought things home from antique shops and have had spirits then, in their house causing activity. So I do think there is something to that for sure.
A close friend of mine, we were all taking a trip together, and we were in Nashville, and we went into this amazing store that had all of these like crazy antique pieces and masks, and he ended up buying like an old tribal mask, and that definitely has some kind of a spirit attached to it, because weird things just kept happening around this mask. And finally he had to talk with it, and now everything's under control, and the two coexist quite peacefully together.
Well, the whole antique shop, especially there was a section of like church
like old church artifacts,
and that area was definitely
there's an old pew, like an old confessional.
Yeah, there was something attached to that stuff there. So I mean, whether it's just residual energy or an actual spirit, I mean, there's definitely something to it.
Yeah, I thought so too. And from I learned from my father and some of the things I was reading, most of them are not necessarily dangerous, though. I guess one of the problems is they take a lot of your energy, so that you can be really drained and tired. And now and then they have there's some attachments that make people compulsive, like eat more or drink more. So they're for some reason they want them to have these compulsions. That's at least what a couple different people that have worked with spirit attachments talk about. But
that's a really interesting thing that you said, because I know when we went to New Orleans last year, I definitely felt like something followed me home, and I could feel it draining me of my energy. It was like it was just, I would be so tired and exhausted after, and I could just feel when it was happening. And after getting, Reiki a few times and other various things, I felt like it left me, but it definitely left an imprint on me.
Yeah, and I definitely think it's something, again, worth looking at, especially if it's something where it's causing a person that maybe has a predisposition to an addiction to make it worse. Perhaps it can really help people and removing from what I can tell, it's not that hard to remove them. It's not like a long process. My dad has an exercise you can do yourself, and even the other, I forget his name, this doctor in Australia that started a whole school too. He had a method he could train people with that, basically took just one time, basically, for most people, I think. So it wasn't a big, arduous thing. And I just think it's kind of an interesting thought in terms of helping people, what kind of spirit attachments could happen, even accidentally, I think, not.
Oh, yeah.
So the other thing, sorry, go ahead.
Bath. Oh, I was just going to say, like, even doing a ritual bath, like just at home, putting in a little bit of goat's milk with some baby's breath. It's all about your intent. If you feel like you have something attached to you, just by kind of watching it wash down the drain, that helps to get rid of it. And it's a simple thing that you can just do in the morning, or before you go to bed at night.
And we do that after every single investigation. We'll do a salt bath just to get rid of any residual thing that might be hanging out.
And you said, did you say you put goat's milk in it?
Yeah, so you can do, it's a little bit of an old hoodoo trick, but you can mix a little bit of cascarilla or crushed eggshell whites. You can take that with a little bit of goat's milk and baby's breath and just kind of concoct a little bit of a salt bath with all of those things. And then just think really happy, peaceful thoughts. And then the white color symbolizes the purity and the purification of everything. So it just helps to get rid of any attachments that you may have. Or even using like a salt scrub is a really good way of just doing it fast in the shower if you don't have a lot of time. Or using like a Palo Santo soap, that's really good too.
We're actually creating our own bath line of things that you can use.
That's so cool.
Yeah, that's in the works. Yes.
Yeah, there's a great book called Spiritual Cleansing by Dreha Mikaharik. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, but I came across it, maybe 6 years ago. It's a thin little book, and he talks about what a real curse is and what it isn't, and how you can basically use ritual baths for not only removing any negative energy, but also for positive things. And he has a one called the beer bath. And the one thing he says with ritual baths is that you're meant to dunk your whole body in it, like your head and hair, and make sure that you have everything underwater for at least 7 or 8 minutes. And his book, he says to not take another bath for 24 hours. So I'm not sure why, but that's just his method. And it's an interesting little book. And I think the ritual bath, you're right. I think it's a really easy and effective thing to do.
It is easy. That's kind of an interesting theory, though, because when ritual baths first started, you have to think, I mean, that was like centuries ago. So back then, like, it was hard to get large amounts of water sometimes in order to take like a full bath. You would fill up a pitcher of water and then you would mix in like different oils and different salts and things. And you would just basically like pour it over different areas of your body. And that would be a ritual bath. So nowadays, thanks to technology, we can take a true, like, full, luxurious ritual bath. But back in the day, I feel like they were just as effective, but you had to be creative with what you had at the time.
That's a really good point. I never thought about how harder it was to take a bath. Yeah.
Yeah.
Martin.
So another thing I was wondering about was how it sounds like you will sometimes try to help the spirits or ghosts or clear. Now, is that something people ask you to do? Do you kind of just do it by more instinct? And then what do you do exactly to help?
We do assist with house clearings. If somebody has a spirit that maybe is affecting them in a way that they don't appreciate. But I don't think that a house clearing is always necessary. So we always just try to assess the situation. If we're able to go in and get a read from the place, then we'll be able to determine if there's something there that just maybe wants to be friendly, or just maybe wants their voice being heard. So if we're able to communicate with it and kind of get an idea of what it wants, then we know if, yes, indeed, we need to do a house clearing to try to rid whatever energy is here, or on the other hand, maybe you can coexist quite peacefully. So it's just every situation is different.
Yes, and if it's really serious, we refer people to this monastery in Detroit that has helped me. Because,
if it's something that's extra dark and beyond our
control.
I'm a firm believer, though, that the power really lies within each and every single person. And it's not something that you have to really call in help for. I think that, anyone can really do a house clearing on their own. It's just a matter of being open to it and really believing in your own power.
For sure.
As long as you have confidence in what you're doing and you assert your authority, you can take care of anything on your own.
Well, I think the confidence is important. I'm kind of curious, what kind of a monastery? Is it a Catholic or Buddhist or some other religion?
Yeah, it's a Catholic monastery, and they actually have a Nigerian monk there that he specializes in the darker things, and he is definitely
he's very powerful.
He's very powerful, and there's a story that we maybe were messing with something that we maybe shouldn't have, and he found our phone number. He called Jen.
It was actually really cute. Yeah, he had called us and he was just like, "What are you guys doing? Like, I know you guys are up to something. Like, what are you playing with?" We were just experimenting with something. But it was really thoughtful that at least he knew.
He somehow knew and was like, "What are you guys doing?"
Yeah, he tracked us down.
That's fascinating, and yeah, I think there are sometimes you have to call in the big guns now and then for things that maybe not all the time, like you said, and there's a lot we can do. Do you find that maybe you've gone in more than once to clear a place, or usually if it doesn't clear once, do you think that maybe you need more extra help, or do you sometimes just do it a couple times?
I think normally, as long as you do it correctly, once really should be all that you need. In the case of Theresa's house, once was great until we played with some stuff, and now we have to do it again.
Yeah.
But once normally for the average person is all you need.
I would say there's things that maybe you can do to kind of upkeep the good vibes, like feng shui, honestly.
Just little things like the study of energy, and keeping plants in the house is really important. Like, that keeps good energy flowing. Keeping fresh flowers. If your flowers die, make sure you get rid of them. Don't keep them in the house. Having crystals around, or any sort of religious relics that you believe in. It doesn't matter what religion you follow, but whatever you do practice, it's good to have a few of those things around, and all of that will help the energy of the
all that is very, very powerful.
Yeah, that's true. You have to clean things out, and you have to invite in the good energy that you want. Remember to do that, and do that kind of like spiritual house cleaning, I call it.
Yeah, and I think spiritual house cleaning is good for anybody on a regular basis, because that will help keep up all the good vibes and keep out the negative stuff.
You could even take it as far as the book, the life-changing art of tidying up. You can even talk to your house and talk to your space. It responds. It does, even if it sounds crazy.
Well,
no, it's not crazy at all.
It's not, because they did a study that like houses that have people living in them last longer than a space that there's nobody in. It actually decays faster. So if you think about it and you think of the energy and the vibrations of living beings, like that, it's really powerful.
Yeah, that's true, because we have had a couple houses on our street that have been abandoned for years, and it's got really funky energy, and it draws in people that really have a lower vibration of some kind or troubled, and it's just the way it is. But even just walking around it, you feel kind of like just a little like funky, darker energy, and some of them been there like 15 years like that.
Yeah, and I've also read too, and I don't know how true this is, but spirits tend to know when there's nobody occupying a space, so darker things will move in, which is probably why my dad wanted me to live in my grandpa's house after he passed. He just didn't know it at the time. Yeah, he just didn't know it at the time.
I'll tell you, it's funny too that with spirits and things, animals, how animals see energy. And I remember that in the first apartment we had in Halifax, or maybe our second one, it was we'd gotten this orange cat, and the orange cat had been there for weeks, was fine, And then one day it would go to the edge of the living room and peek around the corner, and it was terrified to go into the room for about 3 straight days. You couldn't drag it into the room. It kept staring at something and kind of making these little noises. And it's to the point we started looking around the corner, right, to figure out what the hell's in our living room, because this cat clearly sees something. And so that went on for like 2 or 3 days. Next thing you know, the cat's fine. He just walks into the living room like it's no big deal. And so I don't know if he saw a spirit. I don't know if he was just trying to play mind tricks on us or what, but it really, you could tell. And different times we've had animals where you can tell that they see something, that there's something, especially cats, So
I feel like they're half in this world, half in the next. They're always seeing stuff.
Yeah.
It's so true with the cats. We had another cat that was like that, a little black cat, and she had big green eyes. She was elderly. And every now and then she would, in the middle of the night, she would be talking to something. And she didn't talk a lot, and she'd be going meow, 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 meow. And it was like she was setting it straight, whatever it was. It was really cute, actually. She definitely saw things, and it wasn't all the time. It was interesting. It was just some of the time. So one of the things I noticed, I was going through your Instagram today, just kind of looking at some things, and I was very intrigued by this house in Newark. Was it Newark, New York, the haunted house that you wanted to go to, where they had the Ghostbusters ruling? I'd never heard about this before. Could you share a little bit about that story?
Yeah, so there's a house in New York that was legally declared haunted. The case went to court, and they called it the Ghostbusters ruling, where I think it was like somebody was selling the house. I forgot exactly the story about it, but I was so intrigued that the legal system declared a house haunted, and that I don't know if it was like they sold the house and then somebody bought it, and then there was some crazy stuff going on, but I was just so fascinated by it.
There was an article, I did notice one article about just the people in it, and what was interesting was it was haunted by friendly ghosts. And there were these 18th century man and wife, and then this American Revolution Navy officer. And so they kind of got along, and I really liked that idea, because again, that sometimes the paranormal just seems like all ghosts are scary, and you want to get rid of them. And I guess they kind of lived in harmony together. So that was the part I found, but I would have never known about that. That was so cool that you had put that on your Instagram, and I thought, wow, that's the thing about the paranormal. You just never know these kind of stories that are fascinating.
Yeah, definitely.
And then the picture of the house was beautiful. It's like a Victorian house, I think.
Yeah, I would definitely, like, New York has been I've actually never been to New York, but that is my goal to go there. I actually really want to go to Lilydale and take some of the classes there. That would just be wonderful.
I'd like to go to Lilydale. That would be
Store.
cool. I'd
Yeah.
like that would be an interesting. It's quite a historical place, actually. And I've lived in New York. I actually lived in the Hudson area. I forget the exact little town. It was near the Rudolph Steiner farm there. I worked on the farm there in the grocery in the 90s. And I didn't really see a lot, but it turns out to be kind of a hotbed for UFOs too. And then this story, I was like, wow, I was out of it. I missed it all. So,
You were right there.
I want to go back. So
Road trip.
Yes.
So I noticed too that you had premiered a show, The Ghost Girls Paranormal, and you did one season. Do you plan to do another season of that?
So right now everything is kind of changing a little bit for us. If we do another season, obviously it won't be called Ghost Girls Paranormal anymore. It'll
Right.
be Spirits and Sirens.
Yeah.
But we would like to look at maybe doing more independent stuff, a lot more like Instagram lives, a lot more Facebook lives, and then possibly putting our show just on Amazon, maybe at some point.
And YouTube. We want everybody to have access to it.
Right.
So,
We'd like to keep it free.
yeah. And I'm doing a podcast in the future. That's something that we've talked about too. So we're really kind of want to expand what we're doing, but we also wanted to kind of rebrand ourselves. We changed our name to Spirits and Sirens because we felt like it fit a little bit better.
Mm-hmm.
We've grown up
Yeah.
a little bit more in the past year. So we would like to do things that are a little bit more serious. So
Yeah.
we're definitely in a rebranding phase, but this fall there should be many new things. to look forward to.
Many new things to look forward to. Like I said, we also want to come out with our own line of spiritually based bath products and things like that too.
That's wonderful. I do hope you keep your playful spirit because I found it very refreshing, and I think that there's something for everyone in the paranormal world, and I do like someone representing more of that spirit of because there's definitely a lot of the heavy, at least on the TV shows, a lot of the heavy, okay, this is happening, and and that's fine. I like it, but it's nice balance to have like have that sense of play and wonder and curiosity, and sometimes that actually opens things up in surprising ways.
We definitely will be playful. We'll still keep that aspect to ourselves. We always.
That's just who we are. We cannot laugh at everything.
Yeah, that's who we are. We will definitely keep that aspect of it.
Yeah.
Because we can't.
No matter how rough something gets, you just gotta laugh.
Yeah.
Now, do your friends accept this about yourself pretty much? They know and they just think that's who you are. Have you kind of got anyone else involved at times because of your friendship?
What do you mean? Like,
well, other friends besides, your friendship together, but any other friends or people, do they accept your paranormal interests? Have they been inspired by them or influenced at all?
we attract a lot of other paranormal friends.
And what we've noticed too is that we've had friends that didn't believe at all in the paranormal, so they started hanging out with us, and then they've had experiences. So we actually help other people to have experiences, whether they want to or not.
It's like a law of attraction thing. They find us, we find them.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a lot of my questions. Michael, do you have any questions?
Yeah, a couple of things that might be interesting. First of all, how do folks get a hold of you if they want to have you ghost hunt their place or whatnot, websites, or what's the best way for people to find out about you?
I would say you could definitely visit our website, www.spiritsandsirens.com. From there, you can shoot us an email, and we'll be happy to help. You can also visit our Instagram page,
Spirits and Sirens. Our Twitter, Spirits and Sirens. And then we're having a little bit of issues with our Facebook page. They are having issues with us changing our name from Ghost Girls Paranormal to Spirits and Sirens. So we're in the process of figuring that out. We might just
battling it.
We might just have to create a whole new page, but we've been kind of not wanting to have to do that.
Right. So we're hoping that will change. But in the meantime, under Facebook, you could find us under Ghost Girls.
Yeah, Facebook is a mixed blessing for sure. I think we've all had our issues with Facebook at one time or another. let's see, what else was I going to ask? Being girls, one of the things I've noticed, which is really interesting, a lot of the TV shows are predominantly guys with maybe a girl sidekick just for levity. But when we go to ghost hunting events, I think it's like 70% women. I think women are way underrepresented when it comes to the paranormal. And I think that we see a much, much, much bigger audience of women than probably TV indicates, where it seems like a real male thing. So what are your thoughts on, is it time for feminism in ghost hunting, or what do you guys think?
Well, it definitely is. It's time for more women to be represented in the paranormal field. I think that, for a long time it was just mostly men, but now you're seeing more and more women. I've also heard that mostly women watch paranormal shows, so they like to have guys on the shows, which is why more men are casted, which is interesting. So
that's interesting. I think that could go both ways. I think women, I mean, I could see both being, depending on what the age group and who's watching like that. I could see that. I hadn't even thought about that angle. But I think it might inspire other women to trust their own experiences, or maybe do some, just some playful ghost hunting themselves, because I have to say it's much more fun to do it, even though it can be quite slow at times. But once you're there, you get excited when the meters go off and, did you hear that? And there's something very engaging about doing it together in life.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. It is. It can be fun. It's something that you do have to take seriously, but it's just, the more you do it, the more you learn about yourself and the paranormal.
I think Hollywood has a ways to go to catch up, but I'm really glad you guys are doing this, because to me, I think it's so important for girls to have role models too, and to see that ghost hunters don't have to be men. And my Krista and I are very big fans of Doctor Who, the British sci-fi series that's been on forever. And of course, now we have the 13th Doctor. The Doctor has transformed into a woman, so it's the first time that it's a woman Doctor. And somebody said that a little girl now knows that the girls don't have to be the sidekick anymore. And I thought that's really great, and so I'm really happy you guys are doing it. And I think we need more role models so that women know that this is something that women can have a lot of fun with and really do and enjoy. And it doesn't have to be the big brawny guys that are facing down the ghost in the dark alley. It can be the chick in stilettos with the K2 meter.
Well, and I totally agree with that. And I think too, the other aspect of it is we want to bring the light. We want to bring, the other aspect of it, that it doesn't have to be so dark. And so we want more women and more girls out there to, embrace that and, really to just own it.
Embrace their own power.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you find that women really do have sort of a different take on it? Or I know probably ghosts would react differently in a sense, because if a ghost, just like any living person, maybe we react a little more differently to a female than a male energy, and so I think that it'd be interesting to know if you feel there really are differences between men ghost hunters and women ghost hunters, and do spirits sort of react a little differently as well?
At our core, I think we're all the same. We're all equal. It's just a matter of how the ghosts respond, because sometimes you have a ghost based on whatever their experiences have been, where they don't want to talk to a woman or they don't want to talk to a man.
Mm-hmm.
If it was somebody that maybe, was a victim of assault or whatnot, they're not going to want to talk to somebody that reminds them of that person. So every situation is different that you encounter, but I personally found sometimes male spirits to be a little handsy. Yeah. Like you feel things. Yeah. I'm like, that's not good.
Yes. It's different in that aspect.
Yeah, it's just like real life, but instead it's the spirit.
Yeah, and depending what century they're from.
Yeah.
They can have dated views.
Well, we did investigate a house where the upstairs, it used to be a brothel, and it was really interested in the man that lived there. And so I felt like he, being a man living in that house, had a different experience than his wife did. So definitely, I think depending on what century they're from or what was going on before, there might be different experience.
It kind of brings us to another question, really, is the difference between sort of an intelligent haunting and a residual one. And I would think, again, obviously, if the ghost is going to react differently to a man than a woman's energy, that would be a clear sign of an intelligent haunting, in my opinion, that they know the difference between the sexes. And it's not just a loop kind of a thing where some historical event is playing out over and over, but if there clearly is a difference in how they interact with a man or a woman, then to me, that's a sign of intelligence.
Absolutely.
It definitely is. And I've heard that different areas that maybe have a lot of like quartz or limestone have a lot of more residual hauntings because it hangs on to that energy and it just causes things to replay over and over again. So, and then if, you have a case where maybe there was a lot of emotional trauma, that may be more a sign of a intelligent haunting. It just kind of depends on what happened.
And maybe another quick question, too, that comes to mind. We were talking about getting involved with, doing more readings and stuff. And Chris and I have been doing it for many, many years, so we're happy to give advice. But what advice do you give a young girl out there that's thinking that this would be a very cool thing to do? What are some of the things that are good? What are some of the things to avoid? And so what would you tell someone just starting out?
I would say don't let anyone tell you no. Don't, get discouraged. There's been many times where Jen and I have had experiences where people will tell us, that we're crazy or, don't do it, don't waste your time, but really don't listen to that. I grew up from a very young age being interested in it. And if it's your passion, just go for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, at the same time, be very safe with what you're doing, especially if you are talking to other spirits and things. Don't be afraid to maybe say a little prayer beforehand, ask for some protection from a guardian angel, or a relative maybe that you were close to that passed away, just so that way you're doing things in a way that prevents attachments or things from hanging around you that could be harmful. So, you always want to be safe and protected, even if it just means getting a little crystal that you feel has some power or some symbolic nature to you. It's like a little emblem or a relic that you can keep on you. I think it's important to really infuse those things with your own energy, just so that way when you do go to a place that's maybe a little bit spooky, you feel like you have some extra protection around you.
Definitely.
It's so funny. We were talking earlier about Ouija boards too, and how they actually marketed Ouija boards for children. So that's not a bad idea, right? Let's have kids. Kids playing with summoning up demons. That's probably a really healthy activity. So
right.
It's so funny.
Well, I went to at Toys R Us a few years ago, and there was a Hello Kitty or a Barbie Ouija board. I'm like, what's going on? Scooby-Doo version. Yeah, be careful out there messing with that stuff.
21 to drink, but only 5 years old to play the Ouija board.
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing is, that I remember doing a Ouija board, and kids are so open. So my dad took it away for some reason. But I remember it spelled the name of my boyfriend who was alive, and it was an odd name, and we all thought it was a lot of fun. We didn't really, something must have happened. My dad took it away, and we couldn't use it anymore, but we don't know what it was. And so kids are so open psychically and spiritually, and so it's natural they'd be interested in it, to tell you the truth.
Mm-hmm. For sure, yeah, definitely, especially if it's pink and pretty.
Yeah, some of them are really gorgeous too. Some of the old ones, I think, would be fun to collect if you knew what you were doing. Not one that was and had a spirit attached to it or something that would haunt you overall.
Mm-hmm. Well, you never know what you're going to get either.
Yeah.
There's so many people that just sell random Ouija boards online, and you don't know what you're going to get if you order one of those.
That's true.
The Ouija board that I had that we buried, Jen was trying to convince me to sell it on eBay, and I'm like, oh, I don't know. Bad vibes to anybody else. I feel bad.
Well, we're winding down now, and I want to thank you both so much for coming on. I've really enjoyed meeting you and talking to you, and we'll have you back again and check with you to see what you're up to in the future. And so don't forget to subscribe to our channel, too. We're going to have more shows like this, and like us. We love your comments, by the way. We really, really appreciate it. We look forward to seeing you. I think it's not till September we'll be live again, but next week will be the cosmic weather. So stay safe, enjoy the spirit world, and join us again as we continue to explore the esoteric and the obscure. Good night.